Good morning, everyone. I'm Chris Parker. This is Kristen Ishihara. We're with the Ishihara and Parker Law Firm here in Longview, Texas. And today we have a fun topic and often we see people ask these questions to us, should I get my home out of my name? Which of course always involves children for some reason. Should I take the home I live in and take it out of my name? Kristen, is that something we should be doing? Should we be taking our house and giving it away?
Right. Not to give away the answer at the first part of the video, but the answer is no, you shouldn't. But Chris is right. A lot of times this comes up because a child is saying, Mom, you need to get the house out of your name to protect it. Yep. Sometimes people have that concern as well. And it's a valid concern, as we've talked about in other videos. If someone receives Medicaid benefits, they can own a home, and that's an exempt asset. But when they die, there is what's called Medicaid estate recovery. And so you do have to protect your home from that. And we'll talk about the options on how to do that. But the initial question is, should I take my house, my residence that I live in, and get it out of my name to protect it? And what do people think they need protection from, Chris?
Yeah, they're always worried about, hey, the government's going to take it. Or usually what I hear is the nursing home's going to take it. And I'm always like, well, listen, I promise you, our local nursing homes do not want to take your home. And they do not take your home. It's a misconception. The loved ones have gone to the nursing home. They've passed away. Those families not understanding the process probated a will. And when you probated a will, then the government, MERP, Medicaid Estate Recovery Program, got involved and want to get reimbursed for expenses paid. And then the house was sold to satisfy the debt. That's what's happened in the past, or that's what happened to someone, and it's spread to the rumor mill for the next, it's scared everyone else for the next 50 years. And it can be easily avoided. But the arching question is, should we give our home away?
Yeah, the answer is still no, and that's because there's lots of ways to protect the house. You just have to get the right information. So even though that may have happened to a neighbor, Chris and I can protect your house. And even if you do end up with a Medicaid estate recovery claim, that's also something Chris and I can help with. So there's lots of options. But what are the negatives or the cons if you take your house and give it to someone else now? Because that's really the concern. If I took my house and just put it into my child's name, that child doesn't live there, most likely, so it's not their residence, so I've immediately lost my homestead exemption, which makes my property taxes lower. I'm probably over 65, so I probably had a property tax freeze. I've lost that because my child is not over 65 and doesn't live there. So as soon as I take that house and put it into my child's name, I've jumped up the property taxes from what they were previously, which were lower because it was my homestead and residence, and I had a property tax freeze from when I turned 65. So all sorts of bad, complicating things happen when you take a residence, specifically a home, and put it into someone else's name. One other thing that people don't often think about is the step up in basis that happens at death. If I own my home, or really any piece of property, and instead of it transitioning upon my death to my beneficiaries, I gift it. So I do a deed during my lifetime. I put it in my child's name. That child now has the basis that I had in the property. So just for example, I bought my home for $50,000. It's now worth $100,000. If I sold it during my lifetime, I don't pay any capital gains on that growth because it's my residence, and there's some exceptions on capital gain if it's your residence. If I own it until death, when I die and that home transitions to my child, they receive it with the basis on my date of death.
That's great. That's huge.
It's huge because otherwise, if I took a deed and moved it into my child's name, they got it with my $50,000 basis. And if they turn around and sell it, it's not their home. So they actually are going to pay capital gains on the $50,000 growth, or even more because they may have owned it for a long period of time. So there's just some things that you run into that are probably unintentional consequences. But there's no reason to do those things.
And what about this? If I take something that's mine and I give it to someone else, it's now theirs.
Right. The immediate problem of not owning it.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And you're like, well, my kids are wonderful. My daughter will always be there. But what if, daughter gets in a car wreck, runs a red light. Daughter gets sued. Daughter gets divorced. Daughter moves away for work. Daughter wants to do a new roof and you don't. There's You take something that's yours and give it away, then it is no longer yours to control. And all the good or bad things that happen to that daughter, hypothetical daughter, could reflect on the home. And I mean, that's crazy. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. And even not the worst case scenario, let's just say you want to move and downsize.
yeah.
Well, now daughter is the one selling the house, and maybe she doesn't think you need to move,
Absolute loss of control, which I think is very uncomfortable in that scenario.
Right.
Absolutely. All right. So we know there's a laundry list of potential financial problems if you give the house away. We know there's an ownership problem. Okay. So we don't give our house away. Is there an easy solution? I mean, the problem is we're afraid the government's going to take it during Medicaid. Has the state of Texas helped us with a solution?
Sure. So I think we should talk just a minute too about what you should have in place. So if you are not, currently receiving Medicaid benefits, we've talked about this before, what you need to have is your financial, medical power of attorney, directive, and a last will and testament. Yep. You may not need any other solution because, like we've just talked about, we want you to retain ownership, retain control, have all the benefits of owning that residence yourself. In Texas, owning a residence is a protected asset from creditors. There's all sorts of wonderful things that happen when it is your residence. We just want it to stay that way. Yep. So what you probably need is just those estate planning tools, however you choose to use them. If, however, you in the future might need Medicaid or you are at the point of needing Medicaid, yep. Here's where this question comes in, that the nursing home and the state are not going to take your house, but you do need to prepare for Medicaid estate recovery. And there's a very simple solution to that, but it is in limited circumstances where you would use that solution. And why don't you talk about what that is?
Yeah. So, right, we're transitioning from hypothetical problem when we're 50 to maybe we're 65 or 70 or 75, and now the nursing home and the government being involved is more than just a mere possibility, right? We're looking at a diagnosis that's serious, that a clear transition is happening, that there's a midterm to short-term plan where my loved one will be going to a nursing home. Then I think it's incumbent upon those adult children, those powers of attorney who have been there for mom and are paying attention. They're going to say, hey, we need to take care of this, and we can do this by doing what's called a Lady Bird deed. In Texas, we have a very simple, useful device that will cause that property to pass outside of probate. It remains the loved one's. It remains mom's property until the day she passes away. She can always change her mind, but at the moment of death, that property, that Lady Bird deed she would have signed, would cause that property to transfer to the person or persons she's named outside of probate. That, of course, being the key, outside of probate. Texas Medicaid and MERP will honor Lady Bird deeds. If there's a piece of property and there's a Lady Bird deed, they'll say, okay, this transfers outside of probate. We're not going to go after that asset. That's not a recoverable asset. And therefore, your loved one can get all the care they need. The state of Texas helped provide funds for their needs. But then, upon their passing, they would be unable to force the sale of the home to pay back the debt.
Yep, absolutely. So there is an easy solution. There is no need to do anything, extreme.
Right.
What are maybe some other misconceptions that we see people have? I would say one that I'm aware of is in Texas, if you own property together, you don't do that with rights of survivorship. So sometimes I might have a child say, well, I'm already on the deed. Well, if mom or dad or whoever owns a piece of property, their interest will not pass to another joint owner. It will pass pursuant to their estate transition plan. That could be their will if they have one. That could be Texas law if they don't have one. But it is not going to come to you as a joint owner on the property. And I think a lot of times people misunderstand that.
Well, let's break that down. So what does that mean? If I have a deed and I've got mom on there and mom has her daughter on there.
Right.
And then mom passes away. Does daughter as the joint owner own the whole percent of the property?
No.
Or does mom's estate planning control what happens to her one half of the property? Right. So, I just want to be clear about that. So if I'm a joint owner with my mom and my mom passes away, I do not own that property 100%. Instead, mom's will or trust would control what happens to mom's one half. And if she wrote down brother or someone else, then I'd have a new co-owner with me, which would be the person pursuant to the will.
Right.
Yeah.
The other one that I think comes up a lot is just family land. maybe a home or farm or other piece of property has been in the family for a long time, and either the person that owns it or, again, the kids start to worry about, how are we going to keep this in the family? And so they think, oh, I need to take it and get it into somebody else's name. And there are lots of ways to protect property, not just through a ladybird deed, but Chris has mentioned trusts or other things. You absolutely need to go get good advice on your estate plan and how things will transition upon your death. But the answer is probably not going to be take it and move it into my child's name for all of the reasons we've just discussed.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, I meet with a lot of folks who are always concerned about the kids. That's always their focus. I'm worried about the kids. I'm worried about the kids. My focus is on the client, right? Like, well, let's take care of you. The kids will take care of themselves. But if we don't take care of you, then you will be a unnecessary burden that was avoidable, right? Like, we need to take care of you first. So I'm not rushing out to have all my clients say, sign ladybird deeds. Are you 50? Are you 55? Are you 75? There's very differences. Let's not operate out of fear, but out of knowledge. We are giving you documents or helping you do documents that will prepare you for pretty much any possible scenario. But you don't want to do more planning than you need, right? You want
or
the
bad
right.
planning.
Yeah.
Right. Bad planning done out of fear and not understanding of what the potential options are. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, don't let the boogeyman scare you, because you've already done your powers of attorney. You've already done your will. You've done what's necessary.
Yeah.
Now let's see what's needful at the time as the actual challenge arises.
Yeah, that's right. But I think that's one, really gift that I think Chris and I are privileged to be able to give clients is just peace of mind, right? This is the plan. This is how these things would go. You are prepared for whatever comes in the future.
Yep.
I don't have a crystal ball. I had a client say that to me the other day. She didn't bring her crystal ball to the appointment. We don't know what will happen. We don't know when you might pass, when you might need long-term care, that we have prepared you for all of those options in the best way possible, so you're ready.
Be nimble. You have plans that are nimble, and that way you can respond accordingly. I see some people who are just so afraid, and I'm like,
Bad decisions are always made based out of fear. And taking your home and putting it into a kid's name is not allowing you to be nimble. It is not allowing you the choices that you might need in the future, and it is not protecting yourself.
Absolutely not.
Anything else you want to add?
Nope, that was it.
Thanks for joining us, guys. We will see you next time.